The direction the Raiders franchise is headed is really confusing. By every measure last year, it didn't look like the roster was overly talented or, just a few pieces away from being good. And it's even harder to contend in the AFC West. The quarterback play hasn't been good, and Davante Adams even wanted out last year. They ended up having to hire a new head coach for the third time since 2022. Sure, I get wanting to get a guy with proven experience to turn things around, but was Pete Carroll really the right answer? He is 73 years old and turns 74 this year. He isn't actually going to be the coach for the Raiders that long, I think, but it gives just a short window to be good. And that's why the Raiders probably won't even get a young quarterback to develop. They just have their guy for now, Geno Smith, who was the starter for Carroll in Seattle. He has his guy, and Geno just got an extension, proving that he is the guy there. It's a lot of odd decisions, but who knows? It could work. I don't think it will, but it could. I'm certainly not going to argue whether or not Pete Carroll is a good head coach or not. He's a fantastic coach. I remember even as a kid, man, I remember there was this one online game I'd play after football practice with my friends called NFL Rush Zone. It was like an online world, and Pete Carroll was one of the big names when you loaded in because he was a big name because he had just left USC to coach the Seahawks. I might be unk for that, but it was cool. Carroll had been the head coach of the Jets and the Patriots and a successful defensive coordinator all well before I was even born. Then he went to USC and won back-to-back national championships and came 3 points away from a third, but Vince Young led Texas to a win instead, beating Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush. I mean, it was a wild stretch of 34 straight wins for USC. Carroll was great there. Of course, 14 of those games were vacated and USC faced NCAA sanctions. That was all centered around Reggie Bush accepting gifts. He got his Heisman taken away, but now it's been returned back thanks to this new NIL era, but it wasn't okay at the time, and it led to Carroll leaving. He went back to the NFL and took the Seahawks job after Jim Mora, who was actually now the head coach at UConn, was fired. He was fantastic with the Seahawks, and especially with Russell Wilson as his quarterback when he had that position figured out. Seattle never missed the playoffs in back-to-back seasons and only did 3 times in his 14 years coaching there. And most notably, they won Super Bowl 48 by just absolutely crushing the Broncos and Peyton Manning in what was one of the worst Super Bowls of my life. But of course, the Eagles and Chiefs this year really making me rethink that. The Seahawks made another Super Bowl next year, and well, should have handed off to Marshawn Lynch. That was the iconic Malcolm Butler interception game. The Legion of Boom, and the Seahawks had an insane stretch, but all good things must come to an end. The writing was on the wall a little bit after the Seahawks went 7-10 and missed the playoffs in 2021. That was actually Carroll's only time he had a below 500 record in Seattle. The Seahawks decided to move on from Russell Wilson and traded him to the Broncos, and then they had to refigure out quarterback. But then there was Geno Smith, who was already there. He started for the Seahawks for a bit, and even one year when Carroll wasn't even the head coach anymore after he had stepped down and moved to an advisor role. Geno Smith was recently traded to the Raiders for just a third-round pick. It made a lot of sense just because of the familiarity with Pete Carroll. Those two get to pair up again, and obviously they had a lot of success together. Geno made the Pro Bowl twice while playing with the Seahawks, which would have been unfathomable when he first went there. He had to completely revive his career with the Seahawks. He was drafted by the Jets, which is usually a career death sentence for a quarterback. He was a starter for 2 years and then was a backup for 2 years. In all, he had 28 touchdowns to 36 interceptions with the Jets. It just didn't go well for him there. Then he had quick one-year stints with the Giants, where he actually had one start that ended Eli Manning's 210-game start streak, and then he played 1 year with the Chargers before he signed with the Seahawks in 2019. He was just expected to be the backup to Russell Wilson, and he didn't start at all over his first 2 seasons. Then in 2021, Russ got hurt, and Geno got to step in and start 3 games. He ended up playing well. He threw for 5 touchdowns. He only had 1 pick. Russ got traded after the year, and Geno got to take over as the starting quarterback. He played well, ended up winning Comeback Player of the Year after throwing for 4,282 yards, 30 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. He led the league with a 69.8 completion percentage. After the year, he got to cash in. He got a 3-year, $75 million deal. The Seahawks made the postseason as a wild card and lost to the 49ers. Then in 2023, he had 20 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. Seattle went 9-8 for the second straight year, but actually missed the playoffs this time around. After the year, Pete Carroll ended up stepping down, and Mike McDonald became the head coach, who had just come over from the Ravens. The Seahawks did have a good year. They went 10-7. They did miss the playoffs, but Geno dipped down to 21 touchdowns. He threw 15 interceptions with 4,320 yards. Geno is only 34 years old and initially only had 1 year left for $31 million at the time of the trade. The Seahawks decided to extend him, giving Geno a 2-year, $75 million extension, good for $37.5 million per season, which is pretty good. There are incentives that can get the deal up to $85.5 million, and it has $66.5 million guaranteed. Geno is now under contract through 2027, a season that he'll turn 37 years old during. It feels like, in a way, the Raiders are kind of pushing their chips in and trying to go all in. And that's definitely the weird timetable they have with Pete Carroll and an older Geno Smith that's forcing that. It does make sense sometimes. I'd argue it made sense for the Jets to go get a guy like Aaron Rodgers to come to town. You know, it was a disaster, but it did make sense. The Jets were a team, it kind of seemed like they were just a quarterback away from success. I don't think that's the case here with the Raiders at all, though. They went 4-13 last season. They were a complete mess. It's not like Geno Smith suddenly has a lot of talent around him to succeed. It's actually a much worse situation than Seattle, I'd argue. I'm not betting on any team to be a contender with a #1 receiver being Jacoby Myers. He had 87 receptions for 1,027 yards and 4 touchdowns last year. The Raiders traded Devontae Adams last year, and now it's Jacoby leading the way, which is fine, but I don't like him as a #1. I'd love him as a #2. Luckily, I think they do still have a clear top pass catcher in Brock Bowers. He was a first rounder last year, and my gosh, he was so good as a rookie. Had 1,194 yards, 5 touchdowns on 112 receptions. At the very least, I think Geno has a great security blanket with him. The next wide receiver up is Trey Tucker, who had 47 receptions for 539 yards and 3 touchdowns in his second year in the league. Still in the offense, the Raiders also have a new running back that's going to start, Raheem Mostert. Obviously, he had some good seasons there with the Dolphins and was with the 49ers. To make it worse, the Raiders even had a bad offensive line last year too, but hey, at least the defense was also really bad. You know, the pass rush can definitely wreak havoc, specifically Max Crosby, but still, it just wasn't good enough last year. The Raiders just don't have a ton of talent, and you'd expect that to be the key for this type of franchise right now. You build through the draft, you end up with a young roster, and that still might be the plan, but the moves they make just haven't really given me a sense that that's the direction they're headed. Pete Carroll can't be the coach, but for so long, right? I mean, he's already old enough, but I get it. He's experienced. He won a Super Bowl. That was a long time ago, but he won a Super Bowl. They're going to have to find a new coach sooner rather than later, whether he works out or not. Then there's Geno Smith, which makes sense. He's played well, and at first I thought he was just going to be a really, really good bridge quarterback, but maybe not. He got a nice extension, and it simply just wouldn't make any sense for the Raiders to draft a quarterback high and try to develop him. Pete Carroll doesn't have the time to develop a young passer. That doesn't mean the Raiders won't take one at all, but a rookie quarterback won't be the priority. Carroll needs Geno if he wants to win now and have success soon. Just the whole direction of the franchise is super confusing to me. It's not at all how you expect a team to try to rebuild or even just retool, especially when they're stuck in the AFC West with Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and now Bo Nix. I could be totally wrong, but I don't think this is going to work out at all.